All right, so from our information processing view of what's kind of happening cognitively, um, our neo-Piagetians, or people who've come after Piaget and studied this, um, think that as we move from kind of concrete operations to formal operations, that's not necessarily a new speed, it's just a gain in our ability to process information faster. So how quickly can I take something in, understand it, use it, put it back out into the world, right? So when we talk about information processing, that's pretty much what we're always going to be talking about. So at this age, what we see happening are kind of these automatic schemes, and what we call automaticity. So automaticity is our ability to pull things out without having to use too much brain power. Um, so when you think about, like, how your memory works, how, when you're doing stuff, what does your cerebellum do? So one of your cerebellum's jobs is to take over those automatic skills that we don't have to think about doing. Riding a bike, driving a car, right? You don't have to think about it, you just kind of know how to do it, right? So automatic processing or automatic schemes are things that you can just know without having to put too much working memory capacity into it. Right? When I ask you, like, what's your mom's name? You just know that. You don't have to think about it. When I say it's 5 times 5, you should just know, boom, that's 10. Or 10, haha, 25. Maybe I need to review my times tables. Um, so this also helps us with how we read, right? Reading has a lot to do with automaticity. When children are learning to read, we teach them sight words, right? These are words you should just know. The minute you see them, you know what they are. And then there's the words that they have to try and sound out as they're starting to read. So at this age, at 6, we're starting to learn to read, right? We're in kindergarten, we're in first grade, we're new learners, we're sounding out those hard words. But once we know a word, it becomes automatic. And as soon as we see it, we just know it. We don't have to sound it out or try and figure out what it means. This is why you can't look at a word and not read it. Because your brain just kind of, if you already know what that word is, you'll automatically read it. But if a sign is in like a foreign language, your brain doesn't do that, right? If you automatically just see, like, oh, that's in, German, your brain doesn't even try to figure it out, right? It's just like, oh, no, you don't try to sound it out because that's not going to help you, right? I don't know what that is. I'm not going to even try. But if your, primary language is English and a sign is in English, you cannot not read it when you see it because your brain just automatically processes it. So I'm going to show you this here. So I want you just to kind of yell out the word that you see coming out on the screen. All right. So cat, encyclopedia, California, window, religion. Now your brain might have stopped there for a second and been like, blah, 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 blah. These words were easy. Oh, we had dog. I skipped that. Dog, cat. I can read these no problem. I know these words. This might be a word you've never seen before in your life. All right. Antilittering is a word that we don't see every day. And the reason I use this word to show how automaticity works is because I stumbled on this word while I was reading a study a few years back, and it broke my brain because I don't remember why I was reading it. I wasn't reading it because I was looking for literary and stuff. So when it came to this word, I kept saying entiliterine, entiliterine. I'm like, what is entiliterine? What's happening here? And my brain, like, was like exploding because I'm like, what does this mean? And then I kept reading for context clues, and I was talking about, like, it was a anti-littering campaign to see if people would pick up litter. I was like, oh, anti-littering. Oh, okay, now I know what that word is. Uh, so this is what happened. Now you guys are going to come onto this as you go further on in college, right? You're going to start hitting on these bigger, more scholarly type words that your brain's going to kind of like go, put the brakes on and be like, wait, what is this? What does this word mean? Right? New things. You all know this in A&P. Those are you in A&P 1, A&P 2, right? You're learning all these new big words, anatomical type words and processes that your brain's going to have to get adjusted to. But the more you're exposed to it, the more it'll become automatic and you'll just know it. You'll just know how to say these words, know what it means, and it frees your brain up to do higher level stuff. So kids are starting to be able to do that at this age, which means by 12 they should be able to read pretty seamlessly. All right, so their attention level becomes more selective, adaptable, and planful by the age of 12. So between 6 and 12, they're able to pay more selective attention to things, to say, I'm going to pay attention to this and I'm not going to be distracted by other things in my environment. They're going to be more adaptable with their attention, so they can adapt and go back and forth between things. I'm reading this book, my friend asked me a question, I can go over here, I can work with them for a second, and I can come back over here and say, okay, I'm back reading my book again. They also can be more planful, right? They can think things through, they can plan out into the future a little bit further than they used to be able to. Um, at 12, if you say, okay, you've got 3 weeks to do this, and at the end of the 3 weeks, if that happens, and I'll let you, you know, dye the tips of your hair green or whatever you want, they can plan for that, right? They can figure out a way to say, this is what I need to be able to do, and this is what the goals I have to meet. That's not going to work at 6, but they're going to start to do better as they kind of move forward. Right? Like my 6-year-old has chores every week, every day that he has to go to, and he knows to go to the calendar and look at what day it is, and this is what I need to do, and I need to pay attention to this day and do these things, right? That's kind of a planful type of thing. All right, so ADD and ADHD are most likely to be diagnosed at the ages between 6 and 12, and it actually is diagnosed most commonly when a child is in 4th grade. That's when we usually get a diagnosis for ADD, ADHD. The reason 4th grade is mostly happens then is between 3rd and 4th, we tend to move kids away from being as kind of teacher-centered to more self-centered in how they have to perform their tasks at school. So they have to do a lot more independent work when they get into the 4th grade, and that's when the teachers are going to start to notice more the kids that are having a difficult time with this. So the difference between ADD and ADHD is just that hyperactivity, the H part of it. Some kids that have ADD don't have that hyperactivity, right? They just have trouble being able to concentrate and kind of stay focused. Kids with the ADHD have that and also have the kind of hyperactivity where it's hard for them to sit still and they kind of need to be doing like a million things at once. It can result in social problems and academic problems if it isn't kind of addressed, pretty quickly, right? The parents can usually tell when there's something going on. There's also a very high comorbidity with ADD and learning disorders. So children who have dyslexia and dysgraphia and sensory processing disorders are much more likely to also have ADD or ADHD. But ADD specifically it has like an 80% comorbidity rate with dyslexia. So when we go to treat ADHD, stimulant medications are still kind of our go-to. There's a lot of kind of back and forth with it. Do all kids with ADD and ADHD need stimulant medications? No. Do some of them? Yes, they do. Because what is ADHD? It's your reticular formation mostly, but also other parts of your brain aren't working as fast as they should be. It's going too slowly. So the connections between more email, the connections between the synapses are just kind of slower, because in order to pay attention your brain needs to be like attention, 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 like go, 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 shoot that neuron, shoot that neuron, shoot that neuron. All right, so go, 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 pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. So a kid with ADD, their brain's more like, hey, you pay attention. So in those breaks between those kind of neurons firing, oh look, there's something shiny. Oh look, there's something over there. Oh, my tag is kind of itchy. Oh, I don't like this chair. All right, so these other little things that we can usually not even pay attention to because our brain is firing and telling us to pay attention to a certain thing. Their brains kind of get pulled away to all these other little distractions. So when we give them stimulant medication, it speeds their brain up. It gets their brain to the level that an average brain is at. It's not a miracle cure. We don't just give a kid some Ritalin or Adderall and be like, boom, you're done, kid. There needs to be other interventions. The kid needs to learn how to behave correctly. They need to learn that their ADD or ADHD, is not something that gets them out of being able to act like a normal human being, right? We're also going to need a lot of family intervention, right? The family needs to know how to help these kids. They need to be given the resources on how to help the kids learn kind of what it means to be living with ADD and ADHD. Adults can also have ADD and ADHD. For a lot of kids, the ADHD doesn't necessarily go away. It just gets kind of less severe for them over time because they learn how to deal with it, right? It's just part of what their brain is, and they may not need stimulant medication their entire lives. Some adults do. It just depends on how severe the ADD and ADHD is. Uh, if you are, if you have other things going on like dyslexia, you're more likely to still perhaps need the ADD medication later on in life. Just really depends. Everyone's different. All right, for our language development, we want our vocabulary to just keep increasing, increasing, increasing. Um, we want them to exceed over 40,000 words, by the time they're, 12 to 13. We want them to be at over 80,000 words by the time they graduate from high school. There's about 360,000, 300, around about 360, 370,000 words in the English language. So we want you to know about 25% of those before you graduate from high school. The last time we tested this, however, in the United States, we found that the average high school senior only had a vocabulary of between 20 to 40,000 words, which is horrific. And it's, almost 100% due to our kids don't read. Reading is absolutely the number one way in which you increase your vocabulary. The more you read, the more words you're exposed to, the more words you understand, the more words you can use. Kids who read have much bigger vocabularies than kids that don't. But our kids really don't read that much, right? This is why teachers loved Harry Potter, right? Because when Harry Potter came out, first of all being the greatest books of all time, but it got kids reading again. It got them excited about reading, right? Even those damn stupid Twilight books that the kids were reading, all those years ago, at least they were reading, right? At least it was getting them into the excitement of reading. We want to expose them to that as much as possible. As far as grammar goes, they are going to be understanding grammar better. They're going to start to have more of a mastery of it. They're not going to be perfect at it, but they're going to be pretty close to it by the time they get to 12, right? We shouldn't be seeing too many grammatical errors coming out of them. Pragmatics is being able to adjust how you speak to different people in different situations, right? They're going to think about the difference between a 4-year-old and a 12-year-old. Right? A 4-year-old says whatever they want to say whenever they want to say it to whoever's there. Right? They don't care. A 12-year-old, isn't going to do that, right? They're going to think about it. An example, my daughter always gives me the best examples. We were at Walmart. She was 5 or 6, and my son was a baby. And we're, just going through, getting our stuff, and this little old lady comes up and she's, making little goo goo gaga noises at my son. And she turned to my daughter and she said, "Can I take your little brother home?" And my daughter just looked right at her and she says, "Well, that depends. Do you have any milk left in your boobs?" Right? And I was completely horrified and got out of that aisle as quickly as possible. That she was 6. To her, it was just well, if you're going to take my brother, I got to make sure you're going to feed him. So what's going on with your boobs, lady? A 12-year-old would never say that to an adult, right? Especially a stranger, right? That would never happen because they understand pragmatics. They also start to understand that they need to phrase requests to get what they want, and that depends on the person. If I want something and I have to ask dad for it, I'm going to ask him differently than if I have to ask mom for it, or what if I'm asking grandma for it, right? Different ways in which they can do it. If I know I can manipulate, my dad by saying, "Daddy, I really want this." But if I'm asking mom, I say, "Okay, look, mom, this is what I need it for," and blah, 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 right? Who am I asking it for? How should I phrase it? That takes a higher level executive functioning type prefrontal cortex skill that we're going to get better and better and better at as we move through this age.